Jesus may well have been the very first youth minister. He had this group of a dozen people. Some of them were probably teenagers. You look at John and James, whose mother comes to talk for them. You look at John, who later wrote the book of Revelation. Decades and decades later, when the life expectancy was not very high, he had to be very, very young when he was following Jesus. Jesus discipled 12 people, and even then only 11 really worked out. We give youth ministers an impossible task. You are to disciple, if that's even requested, 30, 40, 50, 60 teens. And you're supposed to do it in a couple hours a week. You're supposed to do it through age-appropriate activities and through peer interaction and through an hour or two of Bible study in a week. And that is truly sad for youth ministers. I really feel like youth ministers get a bad rap for that they're given this task that really never should have been theirs to begin with. The Bible from the very beginning, all the way back to the book of Deuteronomy, was all about how families are to pass on faith to the next generation. This is not something that's to be farmed out. And we have taken a professionalized secular culture and moved that into church culture, where we say, the professionals really do the best job. We educate people for that. We take them and put them in accredited institutions of higher learning to professionalize them and to degree them in expertise that will enable them to reach this generation. Well, what are the results when 2/3 are out of church in their 20s? And there's a lot of reasons for that we can talk about, and youth ministers are not to blame for that. Again, they've been set up in an impossible fashion from people who are higher up the chain than they are. This just needs to really be rethought. Really, I think at the bottom line, the value that we bought into was relevance. We said, how do you really make something relevant in a way that will attract teens to this? And attraction is never really the best way to go about things. So we say, well, a younger minister is probably more attractive to young people than an older minister. So let's hire someone young. They'll be inexpensive. We'll get them right out of school. There'll not be a lot of overhead with that. And so now you have someone who is just barely older than the teens trying to mentor and disciple the teens themselves, when the youth minister often has very little more life experience than the teenagers have. What we've also done is we've then taken the youth and siloed them into their own classes, into their own youth activities, so much so that my friend Eric Brown has said that, in a sense, any church that has a viable youth ministry has two churches operating under your roof. And what he's saying is that the youth ministry is like its own church, and then there's the rest of the church. And when teens hit 18, we put all the onus, all the burden of transitioning from youth ministry church to big church, all upon an 18-year-old to say, come join us. Come be a part of what we're doing. There is no relationality. There is no intergenerationality. There are no preformed relationships that help that young person bridge that gap. If we're going to at least have a vibrant youth ministry, we need to be equipping parents to disciple their own children. This is something that I've learned from Joel Singleton. This is something that I've learned from Mark Holman and other people, Church Plus Home, a great book. And there are resources for this. How can a youth ministry equip parents? How can a church equip parents to disciple their own children, just like it says to do in the Bible, just like it says to do in the pastoral letters of Timothy and Titus, that the older generation has an obligation, a responsibility to raise the younger generation in faith, to show them the ropes. So we created an entire teen socialization structure that has just been proven to be problematic and to bear far too little fruit. I'm saying that in a very broad negative sense. I really hate making broad negative generalizations because they're often they can't be universally true. There's some places that are just knocking this out of the park. But again, if you look at the general numbers where 2/3 of these kids are falling away, the point might well be made that we never had them in the first place. We kind of had them off in their own siloed church. They were counted in the numbers. They were seen on Sunday in the pew. We thought we had them, but we never really had them because they were never really part of the larger church body, because we did not intentionally put them into interactions and learning environments and experiences with people of other generations so that they could form positive interactions and relationships in a multi-generational, intergenerational sense, that when it came time to transition, there was no transition. It was seamless because they already knew what life in the larger body of Christ looked like. And we didn't put all the onus, all the burden on them of bridging that relational gap, of saying, please come over to the other side to our way of doing things, and we're not going to adjust, we're not going to change anything. we adjusted and changed everything to keep you happy over there. But when you come over to our side of things, when you have that graduation ceremony and you move over to your college age and your young adult years, we're not changing things for you anymore. That whole relevant to you thing was for your teenage years, and it goes no further than that. Come over to our side. So what can a church do about this? Well, a church can equip parents to disciple their own children. Youth ministers can provide amazingly healthy peer interactions that are one segment of what a teen needs in their spiritual development, but it's not everything that a teen needs in their spiritual development. And a youth minister, cannot be expected to disciple in any deep or reproducible way 50, 60, 70 teens in a couple hours a week in like a 1-on-40 environment where the Bible teaching is like just a little bit of the time, and then there's all these other activities that are amazing peer interaction experiences and opportunities to open doors to invite friends. But what are they really getting when they get there if they're not getting the whole church body experience? Elders need to listen to teens, invite them into your meetings, hear what they have to say. Give them some investment. Give them some ownership of what's going on in the church. We want to hear what you think. We want your feedback. And if you're going to ask that, you have to be ready to move. That doesn't mean that you have to do anything unbiblical or unscriptural, but you have to be willing to listen, to take them seriously, and to maybe make some adjustments that will help them see that they truly are a part of something. I mean, just imagine if at your dinner table, your kids kept bringing up things about your family life that was not ideal to where they're at. And they brought it up until they finally just said, you know what, forget about it. I'm over it. Mom and Dad don't care. This is the way it's always going to be. When I just finally have the chance to get out of here, I'm out of here. This is what's happened with our youth in church. They finally get an opportunity when they go to college in their 20s, early 20s, to finally leave the coop. And they are ready to leave the coop because they were never a part of the larger church body. They were never bought in. They were not invested into intergenerational relationships and connections. So as a parent, I want my boys to have relationships with other adult men. I want them to interact with people who are of different ages. I want them to be in learning and discussion environments with people of various ages. So take our church plant on Sunday morning. We may have up for worship people of 4 generations. People who are like 8, 9 years old, all the way up to people who are in their 60s and 70s, all leading worship together. This is their church. This is your church. Invest in it. Give your feedback. Give your time, your talents, and your energies. And this church will absolutely bless you in the ways that you most need. Because, the whole relevant thing is us saying, teens, you really know best what you really need. And I don't mean to sound dismissive of that, but a teen's perspective, while important and valuable, is also limited because they don't really know what they need going down the road. They don't really know that hearing about certain topics that seem like very much adult topics are absolutely relevant for them to hear in their formative years, for them to develop biblical normative paradigms of what family is all about from a scriptural perspective, or what church is all about from a scriptural perspective. Very, very important for them to understand that. So we have to stop isolating our teens. We have to stop insulating them. We need more interconnection with them in the life of the body of the church. We need them to be practicing the one in others. We need them to be in relationships with people of other ages, and that will form in them a healthy view of the church body so that when it comes time to transition, there is no transition. It's absolutely seamless, and they walk and move right into the life and church body as it is. So do you have 2 churches meeting under your roof? Is your youth minister the primary disciple maker of your child? And if that's the case, there needs to really be some adjustments on this. Again, turn to the resources. Mark Holman's book, Church Plus Home, is a great resource for you to understand how to developmentally appropriately train your children to be disciples of Christ within your family, within your household, where mom and dad are doing the work of discipling, and the youth ministry and the youth minister can come alongside and provide opportunities for socialization and Christian community engagement that is really hard to create within a family of 3 or 4 or 5 people. So I really hope and pray you don't hear this as any negativity toward a youth minister. That is not my point. It's just talking about the system as we've created it. And it's not an old thing. It's a very new thing. And it's so new as in 1970s and 80s, which still is very new, 40, 50 years old, that, man, if we need to make adjustments, let's just make adjustments. Look at the proof. Is the proof in the pudding? Like, look and see who's still around. Are they still around? And if they're not, find out why not. Like, what didn't work? Why are they not here? Where did they go? What are they up to? Have they been faithful? Did they ever return? And if you're not satisfied with those answers, it's time to go to prayer. It's time to maybe even repent of some things. It's time for the church leadership and eldership to seriously begin talking with youth minister to say, what do you need from us? How can we shepherd you? How can we help shepherd these teens? Have the teens ever even spoken with an elder? You know, how would a teen ever give feedback to a congregation or an eldership or a ministry staff if they've never had any conversation with them? And the one who has the burden to approach that conversation is the older to the younger, not the younger to the older. We have set it up, flip-flop to that, to say, you know, we're going to do it our way, we're going to give it to you your way, and when the time comes, forget it. The bridge is burned, you're going to have to build it yourself. We're not interested. We want you here. We expect you here. You know, we want you to be faithful. We have no interest in figuring out how to help you bridge that gap. So we got a lot to pray about. This pretty heavy stuff. And there's a lot of people who will be lost because we just accepted broken approaches. And again, no reflection on the youth minister. If you're a youth minister watching this, you were given an absolutely impossible task by parents who gave up their job, you know? So that's a shame. Really sad. I wish I had better news for you. The better news is we can do better. We can do better, parents. Take that job off your youth minister and allow them to thrive in the things, the parts that you can't produce and provide for yourself. So appreciate you watching the video. Hope you have a wonderful day, and we'll catch you later.